Okay, so I am going to discuss the strength of communication revealed within the works of Wilfred Owen, Thomas Hardy, James Joyce, Harold Pinter, T.S. Eliot, and D.H. Lawrence. Now, within each of their works, each author works to represent communication as an apparatus used to reveal true emotion, suppress behaviors, and form as a method of forming understanding or the understanding of more complex concepts. Now, in Wilfred Owen's um, poem entitled Strange Meeting, we are introduced to two speakers, and it is through the form of the second speaker's communicative practices that the first speaker, who initially believes that, hell is the place to be because he no longer has to be on the battlefield, is able to form an understanding. It is through the word choices and the way the second speaker presents his argument that the first speaker comes to form a newfound understanding. He's able to understand that he did not appreciate the life that he had, and more importantly, that he savagely took away the lives of others because he chose to be run or driven by ineffective or ineffective communicative practices. However, the second speaker has reached a point in the afterlife where he is now better able to understand all that they've missed out on as war heroes and is therefore able to deliver a profound message to the first speaker through better enhanced communicative practices. Now, although this idea seems very vague initially in the poem, it is expressed towards the end of the poem, or solidified towards the end of the poem, when the second speaker reveals to the first speaker that, I am here and I'm in this situation because you put me here. I was killed by your hands. Now, in conjunction with this concept, Thomas Hardy exemplifies the same concept in The Ruin Maid through the character or the persona of Milia. Now, although Milia gives very generic one-line responses, she's very robotic. Everything she says is unemotional and without feeling. And the feeling that we get from it is, kind of irritated and annoyed and aggravated by even having to upkeep the conversation. So although she's able to relate to the unnamed speaker because their lives were once upon a time parallel, Milia wants her away from her because she now feels, in a sense, number one, that she's above her. But it is really through the words and articulation of the second speaker, or the unknown speaker, that we really get a sense of the way communicative practices work in revealing truth. Now, the second speaker is so engrossed and curious about how Milia has reached the level of status that she has, that she's asking all these questions. And towards the end of the poem, although it does not explicitly state, it's easy for one to infer that the second speaker her communicative practice will lead her down a path in which she finds herself ruined to live a better life. Now, James Joyce, on the other hand, takes a different approach a bit in his short story called The Dead. It is through the protagonist, Gabriel, that we really see the ways in which communicative practices kind of enhance or aid in revealing truth. Now, Gabriel is very egotistical, very confident in his role as the man, and he wants to be viewed as the head of not only his household, but his peers. He believes that his education and his wealth has placed him above others. However, it is through uncomfortable situations initiated by women within the text that really reveal the ways in which communicative practices help unearth truths. And that's first seen when Gabriel asks the housemaid, the house servant, about her love life. And she's kind of, taken aback by it. And because he can't necessarily control her emotion or how he perceives she would view that comment, he immediately rushes off to get away from her, solves the problem by giving her money. But even after the situation, he's still reflecting upon these feelings that he necessarily doesn't know what to do with. And then again, he comes across the situation when he's dancing with Miss Ivers, and she's questioning him about going to visit his homeland, going to visit his country. And once again, he's placed in a position where he doesn't necessarily know how to feel about this line of questioning, and it causes him to blurt out that he doesn't care, he's sick of hearing about his home country, and rush off into a corner where he's listening to another woman speak, but not really listening because he's trying to deal with all of these emotions. Once again, Joyce really highlights the ways in which communicative practices, cause unwanted behaviors, reveal truth, and really forces one to form an understanding. Now, Gabriel isn't able to fully form his understanding until the end of the text when his wife reveals, the story of an ex-lover who she believes died for her. But it takes that moment for Gabriel to realize, okay, you know what? I've been looking at things all wrong. And this idea or this theme is continuously carried on throughout Harold Pinter's play entitled The Dumbwaiter. Now, in The Dumbwaiter, we have two male characters, Ben, who plays the dominant character, and Gus, who plays the submissive. And in this case scenario, communicative practices are lacking. We have a lot of ineffective communication and a real lopsided relationship that seems or is portrayed as almost abusive. Now, Ben's inability to express his true feelings is concealed through silence. And for Gus, his feelings are kind of submerged under his continuous playing and taking with inanimate objects, playing with the toilet, playing with the matches and the cigarette carton. Gus really wants to communicate. And he proves himself to be an effective communicator, but he's just lacking the right partner. And Ben's dominant role kind of suppresses Gus's needs and reveals emotions and feelings and actions that he himself doesn't want to deal with. This communicative idea or concept really allows Pinter the opportunity to show communicative practices in both their best and worst forms. And coincidentally, T.S. Eliot carries on this theme in his poem, The Hollow Men. However, similar to Pinter, he doesn't really focus on the strengths of communicative practices, rather than he focuses on the consequences associated with a lack of positive or effective communicative practices. Now, the Hollow Men are described as stuffed, which really paints this stuffed ragdoll scarecrow type of image in our minds or in the mind of the reader. And if you've ever seen a scarecrow or stuffed animal, you'd know that they are literally stuffed with fluff, with nothing. And so everything that the Hollow Men do and say within the poem is therefore meaningless. They're stuck in this in-between stage of the afterlife, kind of like if you've watched Hercules, Hades, right before you go through the River of Styx, that area where all the lost souls kind of just float around. That is where the Hollow Men are. And their desire is to communicate. They want to have the privilege to either go to heaven or hell, but they can't. And this limited scope of communication that they have forces them to partake in actions that keep them separated from those who get to go to heaven or hell. Avoiding eye contact, singing songs of woe. Those are all communicative practices that are elicited through their limited scope of communication. And this idea is really driven home in D.H. Lawrence's Odor of Chrysanthemums through Elizabeth Bates' realization that the destruction of her marriage is not only in part her fault, but also also because of her and Walter's inability to communicate effectively. When we look at a text or when we perform an analysis, one of the very first things we do is look at how our characters behave, how they speak, how they interact with others, their choices, the decisions that they make. All of these things are forms of communication that push us to gain a better understanding of what is occurring within the text. The theme of communication as an apparatus is driven home within all 6 texts to portray the strength and basically humanity's need or reliance upon communication as a mechanism to help drive culture.